We're going back in time a little bit further today to our next Anglican, our influential Anglican that you probably didn't know you knew. Today we're talking about William Temple. He lived from 1881 to 1944. He was a philosopher, known as a philosopher, theologian, teacher, apologist, evangelist as well. Son of an Archbishop of Canterbury. He was raised in the Christian faith, but it's said that the question for him was never, shall I follow Christ, but how shall I follow Christ? He studied philosophy at Balliol College in Oxford, and he would regularly there debate atheists and agnostic students. He was ordained in the early 1900s to the priesthood, served as a parish priest at St. James Church, Piccadilly. Then he became the Archbishop of York in 1929, and then actually the 99th Archbishop of Canterbury in 1942. He died in 1944, so he wasn't very long in that position. In his lifetime, however, he accomplished a number of notable and important things. For example, at the time during his life, Parliament made many of the decisions for the church, much of the budget decisions for the church as well. And the clergy had very little influence in these decisions, and the laity basically had none at all. And so what he did was he actually took a 2/3 cut in pay, resigns from his position at St. James Church in Piccadilly, and he heads up the Life and Liberty movement. And on November 1917, Parliament enacted the Enabling Act, which actually gave the laity in the parish churches both seat and voice on matters of church finances. During this time, William Temple also preached on college campuses, where his intellectual prowess, his intellectual vigor would really be shown. His passion for the Christian faith brought increasing numbers of students to come and listen to him night after night. In the realm of ecumenism, where you're talking about the ecumenical movement, churches getting together, even of other denominations getting together, he really fought hard to address the doctrinal differences between the many different Christian churches. He also sought very hard to unite churches, at least on the level of working cooperatively on the social level, and even in the political realm, the political issues of his day. He launched discussions between the Anglican Church and the Orthodox Church, Russian Orthodox Church. He also launched some discussions between the Anglican Church and the Roman Catholic Church as well. His work is largely thought to have been instrumental in what would later become the World Council of Churches, which was founded in 1948. So that's an organization I'm sure you're familiar with. William Temple is considered the head, actually, of the ecumenical movement of his time. His desire for a unified Christian witness was paramount, was the utmost of most importance to him. Richard Schmidt, in his book, The Glorious Companions, writes about Temple. He says that Temple occupies amongst Protestant and Orthodox Christians a place comparable to Pope John the 23rd among Roman Catholics, unquote. During World War II, Temple is said to have been only second to Winston Churchill in influence on the English people and their morale, keeping the morale up during the Second World War. He worked hard with Parliament and the British government to make the safety of European Jews a primary concern as well. The Gospel of John was his favorite gospel of the four. In 1939, he wrote a book titled Reading in St. John's Gospel. This book was a kind of a devotional work, not very technical in its style, more devotional. It remains actually a popular devotional even to this day. If you look it up, it's very easy to find. What Temple seems to be most noted for, actually, though, is his passion, again, for Christian witness. This would definitely spill over into the political realm. He believed that the church does not strictly exist to speak to itself, but rather to speak to the culture around it as well. The church should be influential in the culture. It has to speak to the policymaker. It has to speak to the politician. And so Temple's final book was titled Christianity and Social Order. And there in that book, he argues that Christians have always spoken out on social issues and public matters, so they should continue to do so today. Christian character, again, he says, is not to be kind of hidden away in the church. We're not supposed to be speaking to ourselves and talking only to ourselves, but we're supposed to be making a public display of our own faith and also in public action. He believed and taught that the church exists to influence the culture. And for good order, for good structure in the culture. Temple has also believed that this could work as a path for the conversion of a lot of people to the Christian faith. They'll see that interest and that concern for the well-being of others, and that would draw people into the church. Regarding Anglicanism, again, Temple believed that the Anglican faith himself is solidly Catholic, of course, in doctrine, continuity, and yet he says we are also fully heirs of the Reformation as well. And in this, he believed that Anglicanism is something special to offer, that even the other two streams of the Catholic faith do not. He understood Anglicanism then to be Catholic and evangelical as well as liberal. Now, liberal, be careful, that's not necessarily I'm not using the word liberal like the way we'll be using it over the past few decades, meaning sort of left-leaning, but rather he's in a sense that we are free. He says we are free as a willing, he calls it we are a willing federation of units. He says as the Spirit leads, we are free to inquire into God's creation and respond to it. He was certainly not a pacifist, but he did emphasize the importance of not seeking to utterly inflict more pain and destroy your enemy, but just to do enough to sort of check the evils of your time. We always have to seek to gain victory, of course, a righteous victory, but then when the war is over, always looking for ways beyond that to find peace. How can peace come out of this conflict, which was ultimately his goal? He thought that was the goal of war. So I am sure that probably William Temple may be the least known of the ones that I've done so far. I'm going to give you in the coming weeks, there'll be some more notable names, I think, for you. But we have gained from his preaching, his teaching, his writings in a lot of ways that we may even not be aware of. Perhaps when it comes to Temple, we should really reintroduce ourselves to his writings, some of his devotional writings, and especially in the times that we're living in today. Someone recently called what is going on in our time a campaign of demoralization. I think it's a very well put together three words or so there. I think it's precisely what's going on in our world, and this means that now more than ever, it's time for the Christian church to make strong efforts to influence the culture even more than we do at the moment, and all of its different many places and facets. And William Temple contributed to that effort in his day in a great way. He was convinced that the Christian influence and Christian involvement meant not only a more ordered and virtuous society, but one that has the potential, because of that influence, to actually grow the church as well, which is ultimately what we want, is we're seeking lost souls, the salvation of souls. So these are just some of the reasons why William Temple is admired among Americans and especially among Anglicans, and why we as Anglicans are proud to call him one of our own. Now consider, as you're watching these videos, that if you're an American, the foundations that you stand upon and the culture that you live in has been heavily influenced by the Anglican Church. And it's produced many great minds. The Anglican Church is known among many things, known among other things, as for its many brilliant and highly talented and influential people. So consider joining us for worship. I think you would very much benefit from it yourself, and you would be most blessed to be numbered among some of the greatest thinkers that have ever lived.